Good evening to the folks at home and welcome to See You at USC on Tuesday night. My name is Dan Toomey, filling in for Judy today, and joining me on the couch is Sarah Jones. She's the president of the Women of Cinematic Arts here at USC. It's going to be a great interview. You're not going to want to miss it. Thank you so much for sticking with us throughout the intro. Once again, my name is Dan Toomey, and Sarah Jones, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Tonight, it's a pleasure to have you on as well. So I think one of the biggest stories coming from the Women of Cinematic Arts is that you have the Feminist Media Film Festival this upcoming Sunday. Would you mind just giving a quick explanation as to what the festival's all about?
Of course. The Feminist Media Festival has been a year-long series of events. We've had workshops, panels, speakers, screenings, all sorts of things. And the goal has been to support our members as they create content over the course of the year. Now, this event on Sunday is our final event. We will be screening a number of the films as well as having an award ceremony and a fun little reception mixer afterwards.
Nice. And so this has been something that's been going on all year.
It has been.
What other events have there been?
We've had our opening ceremony with Haifa Al-Mansour. She's the first female Saudi Arabian director.
Really?
And she came and spoke, and it was absolutely amazing. We've also had screenwriting workshops with the screenwriters from Luke Cage and from Training Day.
Wow.
We had a casting workshop with the casting director from a lot of J.J. Abrams projects. She casted Star Wars and Star Trek, and budgeting workshops, all sorts of things like that.
Mm-hmm. And so through these events, how do you guys project the feminist message, I suppose? Because, I mean, you're really touching upon every aspect of cinema throughout these, but how do you add your own element to them, would you say?
So the goal is, the feminist message, as you say, we could sit in a meeting and talk about feminist issues.
Sure.
And discuss, the intricacies of, intersectionalism and, how the industry treats women, all sorts of things like that. And that would be technically getting across the feminist message. However, we'd be talking to people who already agree with us. The real key and the real way to make better equality in the industry is to actually have feminist content out there. And so the goal with this is actually to support new voices and to create an inclusive creative community where people can actually make content, and that content has a feminist message, and then people will go and see that content. So that's kind of how we're getting across the feminist message.
Mm-hmm. No, that's interesting. I love the point that you made where you said we can't just have meetings where we would essentially just be agreeing with each other, because that's not really sending out any specific message to people who need to hear it. So in that regard, what message, I suppose, are you guys looking for in the films that have been submitted so far? What is the ideal message that a film can convey for your film festival?
Well, we had a theme at the beginning of the year, and that theme was overcoming adversity. And so we encouraged films to address that theme. Of course, we've gotten films that have addressed all sorts of themes and have been incredibly amazing. But that is our core message, overcoming adversity. And the goal is, as an organization and as a group of people, to overcome adversity by working together. Mm-hmm.
And so why do you think, being a student of cinema, what do you think film brings to this the whole feminist movement, would you say? Where do you see cinema coming in play to the movement?
I think media is one of the most important elements in terms of creating equality in our society. We have a lot of people who live in our country who aren't exposed to diversity in the way that people, who live in big cities like, Los Angeles or New York or, Chicago, they get to experience the diversity of the world on a day-to-day basis. But there's a lot of people who kind of live in places where there's not a lot of diversity, who don't understand that there are people who are different than us, who are also very similar to us, and the only exposure that they get to diversity is through media. And so if we have media that is really problematic in its representation and is very stereotypical, that's what people see. I feel like people often forget the power that media has to shape our perceptions of people. And so I think it's really important that we have media that does represent diversity and represents accurately. And that's what our goal is, to create that type of media so we can ultimately influence our country and the world.
Yeah, no, and it sounds like you guys have really done quite the job to make a voice for yourself throughout this year. And to bring it back a little bit, I would love to just hear about the origins of not only the women of not only of the Feminist Media Festival, but also of the Women of Cinematic Art. So where does this story begin?
Well, so the Women of Cinematic Arts was founded back in 2005
Sure.
In the cinema school. And it was very active. We actually also have an alumni branch. So it's a very active organization. However, my freshman year, there were a number of people who were running the organization, and they graduated without picking people to take the lead. So a couple of my friends and I, we decided to get together and restart the organization, kind of craft it how we wanted to make it, kind of turn it into what we wanted to see the organization become. But at the end of this past year, my junior year, we kind of realized, what we were talking about. Sitting in meetings is one thing, talking about the issues is one thing, but we're not actually making concrete change. So one of our board members, Netta, she came up with the idea of actually having a festival and encouraging people to submit projects. And then that ultimately evolved into having this year-long festival where we help people make their projects and then screen them at the end of the year.
And so I think something that's really interesting. I mean, do you believe that we're seeing a resurgence, I guess, I keep saying the feminist message, but do you think we're seeing a resurgence of that in film today? Like, do you guys feel like you're already part of a much larger movement?
Definitely. I think media right now is really changing, particularly in television. There's a lot of room for new voices because television is such a growing medium. You have, traditional network and cable television, but you have also so much online content that they're just eager for new voices and eager for good content. And I think also the public is just ready for good content as well. So that's really what has encouraged the industry to really support new voices. However, I think it is important to recognize that despite the fact that there is a lot of diversity in television, feature films still are incredibly not diverse, and there's still a huge problem there. And that's kind of that's the big industry, and that's really the toughest part to tackle. The smaller films, the independent films and television is a lot easier to kind of manage, but the big industry, it's a system that's kind of set in its ways, and you kind of have to infiltrate it to really start to see concrete change. But there's definitely a lot of initiatives going around to help improve diversity in a lot of different levels.
And something that we've been mentioning throughout this interview is this idea of diversity of voices. And you mentioned to me earlier, I know that you've seen about half the film submissions so far. Of about how many have been submitted?
We had 25 submissions.
And I mean, is this because that's a lot? I mean, for a film, especially a student-run film festival,
yeah,
is that
especially
more?
Our first year, we were really excited about how many people were interested. Yeah.
I mean, did that take you guys back a little bit? Did you expect that many submissions?
I was shocked.
Really?
I was like, oh goodness, we thought just a couple people, the people who were really actively involved with the festival, but we were really thrilled to see that so many people were interested. And now that I've actually had the chance to talk with a number of them while we're coordinating their submissions and stuff, I've just seen how many people this festival's actually reached.
Yeah.
And I keep hearing from people like, oh, I heard about this festival, from so-and-so. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't even know this has had the reach that it's had. So that's exciting because, like I said, this is our first year and our goal is to do this every year moving forward. And so, the fact that we've had such an impact this year means it's only going to grow from there.
Yeah, and I know, and we're talking about the future, and I know that you have the big event is the film festival on Sunday, but what are the steps moving forward after that? Like, how would you like to see not only WCA, but also the Feminist Media Festival expand in the upcoming years?
Well, the ultimate goal is to just create the festival, make it a staple at SCA and at the at USC overall. But maybe some more concrete examples. We'd love to bring in even bigger names. We'd love to hold more events. We would love to get official sponsorship from SCA to help us run the festival. There's all sorts of things that we'd love to do. And I'm definitely going to stay involved with the festival after I graduate at the end of the semester. But there's all sorts of things we want to do. We just want to keep growing it, and we want to, This year, our event is only a couple hours long with a little mixer afterwards because, you know, that's how much we can afford to do. But hopefully, you know, future years will be in Norris, and will be, you know, it will be an all-day screening where people can pop in and pop out and see the films that they want to see. So, you know, that's the dream for sure.
Yeah, and no, it's especially exciting now because we're literally seeing the beginning of something that could be so much bigger. And we get to be the people that are initially a part of it, which is very exciting. And a question I wanted to ask earlier was, so you've got 25 submissions and you've seen half. So what are the different voices that we've seen so far in these films? I mean, have any surprised you as to how they've approached the topic at hand?
Well, there's a lot of different films. We have a number of animation films.
Really?
We actually have a commercial that was submitted, which was really cool. I was like, oh wow, I didn't even think that would be something someone would think to submit, but it is a very feminist piece. We have a number of people who have submitted projects they've made for class, which has been cool to see. And you know, there's a couple of people who have made web series content. It's really run the gamut, and I'm excited because the goal was to really try and get different types of content, and that was pretty much achieved. But next year we want to be like, oh, like let's get interactive media in there. We want to encourage more animation students to exist because there's, or not exist, to submit.
But to be active. Sure.
Exactly, and because there's so much of a divide between the different programs at SCA.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the interactive and animation and production and map don't really mix too much.
That's interesting.
And so we would love to be able to encourage that through these projects.
And so, and I think, what do you believe the importance of, because you said something we really want to stress is this idea of going through multiple mediums. What do you think the importance of that is, not only in building the WCA, but building the movement of feminism in general?
Well, I think always going through different mediums just reaches more people.
Sure.
And especially because the film industry and media in general is changing so drastically, it's always good to stay abreast of that. So, I mean, VR is becoming a huge thing right now.
Really?
And I have a friend who's making a VR thesis, and you know, I would love to eventually see VR incorporated into the festival. But I think just the different types of media, it moves people in different ways. You know, the animation films that I've seen that were submitted, I was like, oh wow, this is something different. You know, it's not grounded in reality. It's kind of all over the place, but it still expresses the anxiety that this woman felt, you know, the woman in the narrative felt. And I was like, oh wow, that's really cool, and that's something different. So I definitely think different medias just really affect people in different ways and can reach different people. So
no, I think that's such an interesting comment about just how flexible cinema is, I guess. I mean, is that something that you came into freshman year knowing, or that you've learned throughout your course here at USC?
I've definitely learned how much opportunity there is in film over the course of my 4 years. Freshman year, I definitely came in being like, all right, let's tell stories. And over the course of my 4 years, I've taken all sorts of really interesting classes about world building and about transmedia and just all sorts of really interesting things that I'd never really been known about. And it's good because now it's gotten me up to date with kind of where media is right now, and so I can move forward knowing about all these new different technologies that are emerging.
So I guess in that case, where do you think media is right now, and where is it moving forward, would you say? I know you mentioned virtual reality, and it's kind of a broad question, I know.
It is a very broad question. I think VR is one of the big things that's being explored right now. We have a lot of big companies like Google and Facebook who are really investing in VR.
Sure.
So that's definitely one of the places that if you want to kind of explore different types of storytelling, that's where you get in, because there's a lot of money being funneled there right now. But it's also just really interesting because it's inventing a whole new type of storytelling. Editing in traditional film has a traditional type of editing language, and so you're going to cut to this person, you're going to cut to this person, all that. But VR, because it's a 360 view, they're still trying to discover how they want to edit things.
That's so
interesting.
And
they're still figuring out all those types of media language editing technique things.
So it changes the narrative as well.
It completely changes the narrative, and the people who are involved with VR right now are basically defining the future of that medium, and it's really, really cool.
All right, well, we got to take a quick commercial break, but I would love to talk to you more in the second half of the show if you can stick around with us.
For sure.
All right, thank you very much. For Sarah Jones, once again, we have a quick commercial break, but stick with us. We'll be right back.
Have taught us anything, it's that we need representation. It's that our voice matters. It's 2017, and we've seen an outpouring of feminist media. Yet, unfortunately, we are still in the minority.
Only 3.4% of film directors are women, and only 10.8% of film writers are women. Women only comprised 28.7% of all speaking roles in films within the past 2 years. And that's why we, the Women of Cinematic Arts, exist, to encourage and support diversity in entertainment, and to provide a network of industry professionals determined and committed to creating change in the industry.
And that's why we've launched the first ever Feminist Media Festival. Joining is easy, and submissions are open to everyone. And there's only a few rules.
1. Team must be 50% women, which, I mean, come on, that's just not hard. 2. Films pass the Bechdel or Mako-Mori test. 3. Be less than 10 minutes. 4. Projects must be submitted by March 20th.
So pick yourself up, find yourself a team, and get to work. We can't wait to see what you do next, because together, we are unstoppable.
And welcome back to See You at USC on Tuesday night. Once again, my name is Dan Toomey, filling in for Judy today. And Sarah Jones has been here with us. She is the president of the Women of Cinematic Arts here at USC that has the Feminist Media Festival coming up. And we just saw a bit of a promo for it.
Yes, that was a promo for our submissions, which were due this past March 20th. And we got 25 submissions, and we're super excited to share some of those films with you guys.
Nice. And so during the first half of the episode, we talked a lot about the whole concept of media and the movement of feminism and how that all correlates. And I think something I would like to hear about more is your history here at USC. So where did your whole passion for cinema begin?
Well, I've always loved telling stories and just stories in general. My mom always tells the story about when I was little, I would just flip through picture books and not even read the words because I couldn't read yet. I just loved looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I used to write, I acted for a bit, and ultimately that kind of just led me to film. I had a lot of theater friends in high school, and they would always love to act out in front of the camera, and I was happy to film them and tell them what to do. So that's kind of what happened.
Sure.
And yeah, I just have always loved stories, and so this was kind of the natural progression. Obviously, I'd never expected to get into SC, but this is my final year, and I'm immensely grateful to have gone here.
And so then how did you first become a part of WCA? I mean, you mentioned earlier how you became president. So what were the initial steps into getting in with the group?
So I knew I wanted to be involved with WCA as soon as I got to campus.
Really?
I had heard about them through their involvement fair, and I went to a couple of their meetings. Unfortunately, because that freshman year, the members who were running the organization at that time did not have anyone to take over after they graduated, the organization kind of ceased to exist. And so I met up with a couple of people who were also interested in having the organization, because we all thought it was a super important thing to have at SC. And we basically restarted it from scratch, and we kind of were figuring out things as we went along, how to book rooms and, what events to hold, and how to reach membership. And we were kind of just figuring it out from scratch. And so it was only natural that our progression would eventually lead us to redefining our organization and making this festival that we've made. So yeah, I mean, I've been involved with it since freshman year, and I'm definitely going to be sad to leave. But like I mentioned before, we have an alumni organization, and I'm hoping to get involved with them once I graduate.
No, and it definitely sounds like WCA has a bright future ahead of it, especially with FMF on Sunday. And another question I wanted to ask is, so as the head of WCA, do you guys feel as you are one of the many feminist voices on campus, or one of the few, rather?
I definitely think we're one of the many.
Really?
We are specifically a feminist organization within the School of Cinematic Arts.
Sure.
There is a overarching organization that we're actually technically a member of called SAGE, which is part of undergraduate student government. It's the Society or Associate. They recently changed their name, so I don't know exactly what it stands for.
You have the acronym.
Yeah. The G and E stand for gender empowerment. So they actually changed it from WSA, which was Women's Student Assembly, to SAGE. to be more inclusive, which I think is great.
And it's catchy too.
Yeah, it's definitely catchy. But there's all sorts of organizations. I've actually received emails directly to WCA from organizations in the business school, organizations in Annenberg,
Really?
just organizations across the school that want to collaborate, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
And there's new organizations popping up every day. There's a new one that was just founded called Artemis, which
yeah.
it's really cool. And I didn't really know much about it, but I met them at a mixer that we put on with the other diversity organizations at SCA, and they were like, yeah, we're forming this organization where we basically sponsor, people pitch projects, people pitch feminist projects to us, and we help fund them. And I was like, that is cool. That is another way to support new voices. Instead of just talking about the issues, they're actively, supporting new voices. And I was like, wow, that's really something special. So I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah, I mean, and so how much does WCA work in correlation with SAGE? Is it that you report to them, or is it rather?
Not really. They're really just a supportive organization because they're affiliated with USG. We can go to them with, we would love to fund this event, or we have this idea and we'd love to work with you guys on it. We love going to their meetings and just hearing what their membership is interested in, because it really helps us inform what types of things that we should be doing. But they definitely don't control what we do. We're just kind of collaborating with them and working with them. So it's our way of connecting with USG and with the student body overall.
And I mean, and I think it's so interesting because the movement of feminism, I mean, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have seen any of these groups on campus, or at least it would be a handful. And now there's this whole network of them across campus. I mean, being a part of that movement, what does that mean to you to know that you're part of such a much larger community?
It's definitely really cool to think that we are kind of the next stage in a movement that's been around for a long time. Feminism has been around for a really long time. However, they've just not been as vocal.
Precisely.
Or they haven't been able to be as vocal. And feminism has also often been just for, straight white women and is not really involved with intersectional issues. And right now, especially, there is a lot of a push to make sure that feminist organizations are being intersectional and are considering everyone.
Really?
And so I take a lot of pride in making sure that our organization focuses on that and make sure that we include everyone and support everyone's voices.
What are some of the steps that have been taken? I mean, I know you guys are active throughout the year. Have there been any specific events or movements that focus, or not necessarily focus, but really have an emphasis on the whole concept of diversity? Or do you think it's just something that happens naturally with how things are going on campus today?
I think hopefully it would, ideally it would occur naturally, but
course.
Oftentimes, especially in our current climate, oftentimes we really have to put emphasis on it. And one of the things that we're doing is we're making sure to collaborate with the other diversity organizations in our school. We have Queer Cut, we have the Asian American Cinema Society, African American Cinema Association, and the recently founded Acción Latina. And we actually recently held a mixer with them to bring everyone together. And
really?
Yeah, it was really fun. It was a couple weeks ago. And that's kind of just the first step in something that we hope will be a very long collaboration. We've had a lot of meetings with our board members together to discuss how we should move together as a group and how we can make our group of diversity organizations more represented within the cinema school. There's a lot of organizations, a lot of cinema organizations at the school, but we're specifically focused on supporting the student body and supporting diversity. So we're hoping to kind of work together to make more of an impact.
Yeah, and it sounds like the upcoming festival really is a great avenue for that. And something that we talked about earlier during the break was that it's not called the Feminist Film Festival or the Feminist Cinema Festival, it's called the Feminist Media Festival. And you said that it was very important that it was called that. I mean, would you mind just elaborating upon that decision?
Yeah, I mean, we went through a lot of different possible names for this festival, but one of our main goals was to make sure that it wasn't film, it was media, because as we were discussing before the break, media is so all-encompassing. You have your traditional films, but you have all sorts of new media that's coming out, and we wanted to make sure that all of those different types of media were accepted in this festival, because just as we're really inclusive of diverse voices, we want to make sure that those diverse voices can be expressed however people want to express them. And there's so many opportunities for creativity in all these new media forms. So we're really encouraging people to submit projects that are more not more creative, but just kind of push the boundaries of what's expected.
Exactly. And it seems that pushing the boundaries has really been one of the themes of this whole movement and in your work over the past few years. I mean, would you say that one of your goals has been to always push the boundaries?
I would say so. I think ideally everyone wants to push the boundaries.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've really been trying to do things that that, we didn't know that if the organization had done before. Like I said, we were kind of starting this organization from scratch. So when we were trying to plan events or trying to do things, we were like, all right, there's no one to tell us what to do, so let's just go do it, And that's one thing that I've really tried to stress to my board. They get sick of me saying it for sure. They're thinking about putting it on a mug, but my kind of catchphrase is take initiative. And if there's someone you want to bring in to speak, start reaching out to those people. When we got Haifa Al Mansour for our opening ceremony, we didn't have anyone to, like an agent, to go call their agent to bring her on board.
Yeah.
We called their agencies directly, and we wormed our way in. And, we spoke to a lot of people, trying to get a lot of people to come to this opening ceremony. And Haifa was so gracious to come, and she was incredible. So, that's kind of one way that we've been pushing the boundaries. And we really want to encourage our membership and the people making the films to do the same.
And so how does, for the incoming student to USC, I mean, acceptance letters just came out, so we're going to have a lot of new Trojans coming in. How does a freshman become involved in the WCA? What are the first steps that need to be taken?
Well, what I like to say is, if you want to become involved with WCA, show up to an event. If you show up to an event, you are a member. If you call yourself a member, you're a member. Even if you can't make it to an event and you like us on Facebook, sure, you're a member. To be officially involved with the Feminist Media Festival, we had a process of registration. You would register, you just fill out a simple form, pay a $5 registration fee, and you have priority access to all of our events. And you also are able to submit a project to the festival.
Really?
And so we had a lot of people register at the very beginning of the year, and they've been registered for this festival all year.
Seriously?
Yeah. And so they've been able to come to the events, get into the ones that might have been smaller, and now they're submitting projects. So if you want to officially become involved with the Feminist Media Festival, you can register. The events are open to everyone still, but if you'd like priority access, that's kind of the best way to get involved. And if you still want to register, you can, and you'll get priority access to our event on Sunday.
Well, it sounds like take initiative has been the message, and it seems as though that has been taken by many students across campus. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you. Once again, the Feminist Media Festival this Sunday. You're not going to want to miss it. Once again, my name is Dan Toomey for Sarah Jones, and for the rest of the crew here at CU at USC on Tuesday night, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.
No! What the heck?
It's a hard game.
Yeah, but it